We are in step 21, and if you're watching this video, it means that you have already manually corrected your regions of interest, and you have run some kind of validation in step 20 to make sure that your manual corrections made sense. So what we're going to do now is use the final objects of interest or regions of interest that we've collected to get measurements about them. You can use these measurements for several reasons. For example, if you want to study intensity of the neurons, which we're not going to do here, but this is always an option. Just keep in mind that the selections of StarDist are not perfect in terms of finding the contours sometimes, which means that you have to be careful what kind of measurement you want to get. For example, trying to get a mode measurement might result in a very dark, a very low value that corresponds to dark region, just because most of the pixels that you selected, let's say pixels around the contours, and they were black. So be careful with intensity and try to figure your own ways to combat this issue. But with no further ado, let's see what we have to do from now on. So I'm going to create some subfolders in my directory, because I told you I always want to work with subfolders. So first of all, I will take some files of my dataset for BLA CIFOS. This is the dataset that we've worked with so far. Let's see what we need. Well, we're gonna need the very last rows. This is after your manual corrections and your validation. Let's see what is inside and if I've pasted anything. Not yet. All right, so Control A to select everything, copy, and then I will paste it here. So I have the very last rows here. Then I need the resized BLA photos. And when it comes to getting final data, I would recommend not using the white background images. At some point in the previous step, I actually mistakenly said that from now on we'll be only working with white background images, but the truth is that these white background images, if you recall, we created some sorts of masks to get the region that we were interested in and separate it from the background. But the problem with that is that in some cases we might lose pixels, or we might convert pixels depending on the script that we chose, one or two. In both cases, we are actually processing a bit the image, which might lead to erroneous results. So in this, from now on, when we're getting measurements, since we have our final regions of interest, we just need the BLA resized images. And this is, in this set of tutorials that I made, is actually the first step, which was step number 12, if I'm not mistaken, or 13. Just after training the network, you remember that we first resized our images before we create the white background. So this resize step is what we have here. And these are images as in the white background, but not with the white background yet, and not with using the mean gray value of this whole region to change the intensity of the display here. So we're using the BLA resized. Good, we have them already in there, and this will be the folder where the final measurements will be saved. What I need to do now, well, I can open first the script and show you something, the macro. So I go process batch macro, all right, and I'm not sure which one I had here. So strong recommendation, as I always say, delete everything first, really strong recommendation, and reload it, although it's a bit boring. So results rows I'm going to select, and for the input I want the BLA resized images, because that's the template in a sense that I'm going to use. So let's see if I've written properly the paths. You'll have to change the paths. So BLA very last rows is the path for the row manager, and indeed here we have the rows, and the BLA resized is selected, and the BLA final CIFOS measurements BLA CFOS final measurements will be the folder where everything will be saved. Now, if I run this, it won't work yet, because if you see, we start by getting the title of the file, right? And the title of each file that iterates through this input folder, the BLA resized, is this. So it includes a TIFF, but the way we've generated our data, unfortunately, we don't have a TIFF now, all right, in the results. At least that's what happens when you go for the blinded option in step 19a. This might differentiate a bit, and maybe you won't have to change anything otherwise, but at least based on the way I update my data and based on the codes that I've run, I get an output like this. It's fine. You can still change it. The problem that's going to happen now is that if I run this, because there's no TIFF in the zip files, the match cannot be done between the regions of interest and the BLA resized images. And of course, we need to match these two in order to run the measurements. You can combat this issue with different ways. You can combat it by slightly changing the code here, or by changing the names in the files. I prefer to change the names in the files. Don't ask me why, there's no reason. So how I do that again is that I will open the PowerShell. Actually, now I have to exit this, and I go to cd BLA resized. Oops, sorry, not here. BLA very last row, so I was actually in the right folder. Well, you can change whatever you want, but let's see. Oh yeah, of course I need to type the cd. Now that I'm inside, I'm gonna run this command, and what this command will do is that it will search for files that have the zip, the .zip, and it will replace the .zip with .tiff.zip. So I will also have the window here, so you see the change. I'm pressing enter, and what's happened here is that the names have changed, and now my script is ready to run. And I'm just making sure one last time that everything is put properly. BLA resized there, BLA very last row is for the row manager indeed, BLA CFOS measurements here, everything should be fine. Okay, and I'm pressing process. Now, because I have some images that I have excluded from my final dataset, meaning that I had them in the BLA resized, but I decided not to have them later on, I'm getting some errors, but these errors don't mean anything. It's just regions that are below 1 in terms of Bregma. All right, so it is done. So this is step 21, and your final output of this step is, of course, as a directory with CSV files. Each one contains information about the number of the neurons you have, which we're going to use, but also other information like the area and the mean, and whatever you've chosen to set measurements option in your Fiji image.